Simone Ashford was 34 years old when she buried her husband of 15 years and watched his mistress walk into the funeral 7 months pregnant. Julian had been dead 3 days. Simone had spent those 3 days finding the ultrasound photos hidden in his phone, the second phone bill, the diaper bag receipt she'd once dismissed. She said nothing. She wore black. She sat in the front pew beside his mother and let the room believe grief had made her small. Then Brianna Doss stood up in front of 200 mourners and announced she was there to claim her share of the $100 million estate, the empire Simone had built beside Julian from nothing, the empire whose books only Simone had ever truly understood. Brianna had no idea whose signature controlled every dollar of that fortune. Julian never told her. He never told anyone. What happened next would happen fast, but it would happen in front of everyone. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today, and if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is even more intense. The numbers never lied. That was the first thing Simone Ashford had learned as a forensic accountant, back when she still had business cards with her name on them, back before the wedding, before the decision, before she'd traded her own desk for a quieter role behind Julian's, running the financial engine of an empire neither of them had fully imagined yet. She sat at the wide oak desk in their home office, surrounded by 4 neat stacks of quarterly reports. The lamp cast a warm yellow circle across the pages. Outside the window, the Atlanta skyline blinked in the dark like something alive. 15 years. That's what these numbers represented. 15 years ago, she and Julian had bought a run-down duplex in Decatur with $40,000 in savings and a spreadsheet Simone had built from scratch. She'd tracked every repair cost, every rental payment, every tax line. Julian had done what Julian did best, charmed the tenants, shook the right hands, found the next property before anyone else even knew it was available. Now the portfolio sat at just over $100 million. She turned a page and made a small note in the margin. Her handwriting was precise, always had been. "You're still working." Julian appeared in the doorway of the office. He was already dressed, navy suit, no tie, the open collar that made him look approachable without looking careless. At 41, he was still handsome in the easy, effortless way that had always made rooms turn toward him. His jaw was clean-shaved, his shoes were perfect. "I'm always working," Simone said without looking up. He laughed. It was a warm sound, familiar. "The Harwell property numbers look okay?" "Better than okay. Margins are up 11% since we restructured the lease terms." She finally looked at him. "You should know that before you sit down with whoever you're sitting down with tonight." "Harwell himself, actually." Julian straightened his cuffs. "Dinner at Layla's. Probably runs long." "Don't let him order for the table," Simone said. "He does that when he's trying to put you on the back foot." Julian pointed at her. "This is why I keep you." "You keep me because without me you'd have lost this company twice." She said it lightly, the way only 15 years of truth could make something light. He crossed the room and kissed the top of her head. His hand rested on her shoulder for a moment, warm, heavy, familiar, and then he squeezed once, gently before letting go. She almost didn't notice it. Almost. But the squeeze lasted just a second too long, and when she glanced up at him, there was something in his expression she couldn't name. Not guilt, exactly. Softer than that. Sadder. Like a man looking at something he'd already decided to leave behind. "Don't wait up," he said. "I never do," she said. And then he was gone. Simone worked for another hour before she reached for his open laptop to pull a shared vendor file. She didn't mean to see it. She wasn't looking for anything. She was just working, the way she always did, quiet and methodical and thorough. The credit card statement tab was still open from when Julian had been reviewing expenses earlier. Her eyes moved down the column out of habit. Professional habit, the kind you don't unlearn. Most of it was familiar. Fuel, meals, a hardware supplier they used on the Midtown renovation. Then a charge that stopped her cold. Bellamy & Co. Boutique, $348. She knew that store. It was on Peachtree, beautiful things in the window, baby things. She had walked past it once and paused to look at a quilted diaper bag in the display, the kind with brass hardware and a monogrammed strap, soft tan leather. She stared at the charge for a long time. Julian and Simone didn't have children. That had been a quiet grief of its own, a door they'd stopped trying to open years ago. He had no siblings with new babies. His mother's grandchildren were all grown. She closed the laptop slowly. She told herself it was nothing, a gift for a client, a colleague, something easy and explainable. She went back to the quarterly reports. But the numbers felt different now. She read the same line 3 times without absorbing it. Around 9 o'clock, she noticed something else, something she'd seen before but hadn't thought about until now. Julian's phone, sitting on the corner of the desk where he'd left it charging. The screen lit up with a notification, and the lock screen appeared. It was a passcode screen. Julian had never used a passcode. For years, his phone had been open. She'd grabbed it 100 times to check a restaurant address or pull up a contractor's number. He'd never minded. She didn't touch it. She just looked at it until the screen went dark again. The call came at 10:47 p.m. A man's voice, clipped and professional. "Is this Simone Ashford? We're calling from Emory University Hospital. Your husband collapsed at a restaurant this evening. He was brought in by ambulance. You should come now." She didn't remember the drive. She remembered the parking garage, the sliding doors, the nurse who walked toward her with that specific expression, the one that didn't leave room for hope. By the time a doctor took her into a small room off the main corridor and sat down across from her, Julian was already gone. The kitchen was too quiet. Simone sat at the table with both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. The steam had long stopped rising. Outside, Atlanta was waking up. Garbage trucks, a neighbor's sprinkler, the distant bark of a dog. Normal sounds, sounds that had no business existing on a morning like this. Julian's phone sat on the table in front of her. Patrice had called twice already. Julian's business partner, Roland Getty, had left a voicemail she hadn't played yet. There were things to do, calls to make, a funeral to build around a man who had not expected to die at 41, and had therefore left behind a mess of half-finished conversations and unanswered messages. The estate attorney, Desmond Cole, had emailed a checklist at 7 in the morning. She appreciated that about Desmond. He was the kind of man who did the useful thing rather than the emotional thing. She unlocked Julian's phone with the code she'd found written in his desk calendar, the one place he'd always kept backup passwords because he was charismatic and charming and absolutely terrible with technology. She'd known about that notebook for years. He'd never thought to move it. She opened his contacts first, made a list of names for the funeral notifications. 3 property investors, his architect, the general contractor on the Midtown project, his old college roommate Desmond already handled. She wrote each name in her notebook in her small, even handwriting. She was halfway through the call log when she saw the folder. It wasn't labeled. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, a small gray icon tucked into the second page of his apps, the kind of hidden folder you created deliberately, not by accident. You had to know to look. Simone knew to look. She had spent years reading financial records designed to hide things. She recognized camouflage. She pressed it open. Ultrasound photos. 8 of them, arranged in chronological order. The earliest was dated 14 months ago, a small white blur on a dark gray field, the kind of image that didn't look like much to anyone who didn't know what they were seeing. The most recent was from 6 weeks ago. The shape was unmistakable by then. A profile, a nose, a curled fist. Simone looked at each one. She set the phone down on the table, picked up her coffee mug, put it back down without drinking. Then she picked up the phone again and opened his messages. The thread was labeled with a name, Brianna D. It went back 3 years. She didn't read all of it, not yet. She scrolled slowly, skimming, enough to understand the shape of things, enough to see that this was not a moment of weakness or a brief, stupid mistake. It was a sustained arrangement. There were messages about rent, about a doctor's appointment he had attended, about a condo she'd never heard of. There was a message from 6 weeks ago, sent 2 days after the most recent ultrasound. "You need to stop worrying. By spring, I'm going to make it right. You and the baby are going to be taken care of. I promise." Simone read that one twice. By spring. She thought about the credit card charge, the diaper bag, the passcode on the phone, the way he had squeezed her shoulder last night and held on for just 1 second too long. She thought about all of it, and she felt something move through her, something large and cold and very, very quiet. Not the hot, breaking kind of grief, something older, the kind that settles into your bones and stays. She did not cry. She went upstairs, got her own phone, came back to the kitchen table, and spent the next 22 minutes methodically screenshotting every message in the thread, every ultrasound photo, the folder itself open on screen. She emailed the screenshots to a private account Julian had never known about, one she'd kept since her forensic accounting days out of habit, because she had always believed, in some quiet and unexamined part of herself, that a woman should keep one door that belonged only to her. She deleted the sent email from Julian's phone, cleared the recent activity, closed the folder. Then she set his phone down, picked up her own, and called Nadia. It rang 3 times. "Simone?" Nadia's voice was warm and immediate, already on alert the way ER nurses got, present and ready before you even spoke. "How are you doing, honey?" "I need you at the funeral," Simone said. Her voice was steady. "I need you close, the whole time." A pause. "Done. Say no more. I'll call in the shift swap today." "Thank you." "Do you want to talk?" "Not yet," Simone said. "I just need to get through the next few days first." Nadia didn't push. That was what Simone loved most about her. Patrice Ashford arrived at noon, dressed in dove gray with her silver hair pinned back, carrying grief the way she carried everything, like a public statement. She sat at the same kitchen table and laid out her expectations with the focused energy of a woman who processed pain through logistics. The venue, the flowers, the program, the guest list, which was really a ranking system disguised as a guest list. "Julian's standing in this community deserves to be honored properly," Patrice said, her hands folded over her leather planner. "The service needs to reflect everything he built." "Of course," Simone said. She kept her voice even. She wrote down every detail Patrice requested in the same small, precise handwriting. The funeral was set for 3 days later. The church held 400 people, and every seat was filled. Simone sat in the front row with her hands folded in her lap and her back perfectly straight. She wore black wool, simple and fitted. No jewelry except her wedding ring and the small pearl earrings Julian had given her on their 10th anniversary. She looked exactly like what the room expected her to look like. She was not what the room expected. While the pastor spoke about Julian's vision and generosity and love for his community, Simone watched the pews. She clocked the property investors near the middle, the city councilman 2 rows back, 3 journalists she recognized from the Atlanta Business Chronicle, Getty, Julian's business partner, sitting on the aisle with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, already calculating something. She filed each face away like an entry in a ledger. Patrice cried quietly beside her, dabbing her eyes with a folded handkerchief. Dignified, controlled. Even her grief was a performance. Simone noticed that, too. Brianna arrived during the reception. The reception was held in the church's event hall, a long room with cream walls and round tables and too many white lilies. The kind of room designed to make hard things feel softer. It didn't work. Simone saw her before most people did. She came through the side door wearing a black wrap dress that stretched across a stomach that was very obviously, unmistakably, 7 months along. She was young. Younger than Simone had expected somehow, even after the texts. She had the kind of face that expected to be looked at and usually got what it expected. She moved through the room like she had been invited. She sat down at a table in the family section, just chose a chair and sat. Simone watched her do it and did not move. It was Patrice who reacted first. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps, her voice low and sharp, the way it got when she was trying to contain something before it could become a scene. "I don't know who let you in here, but you need to leave, right now." Brianna looked up at her with calm, flat eyes. "I'm not leaving. I have every right to be here." "You have no right to be anywhere near this family." "Julian's child is my family." Brianna's voice rose just enough, deliberately. She'd planned this. "And when the estate is settled, everyone in this room is going to understand that." The murmur started immediately. Simone heard it move through the hall like a wave, table to table, face turning toward face. Brianna stood up. She was not done. "Julian promised me," she said, louder now, her voice carrying cleanly across the room toward the cluster of journalists who had gone very still. "He told me that I and our child would be taken care of. $100 million in real estate assets, and his family is going to try to push us out like we don't exist?" She pressed one hand to the side of her stomach. "I'm not going anywhere until everyone knows what was promised." The room broke into noise. Patrice's face went white and then red. Getty looked down at his shoes. Several people pulled out their phones. Simone stood where she was near the far wall, a glass of water in her hand, and she watched all of it. She watched Brianna's performance, and she watched the room's reaction, and she watched Patrice's face very carefully, because what was on it was not only shock. There was something else underneath, something that looked almost like dread, like a woman hearing out loud the thing she had worked very hard to keep quiet. Simone filed that away, too. Desmond Cole called that evening and kept it brief, the way he always did. "Will reading is tomorrow morning," he said. 10 o'clock, my office. You need to be there." "I'll be there," Simone said. Desmond's conference room smelled like old paper and coffee. A long oak table, 6 chairs, morning light coming in flat through the blinds. Brianna sat across from Simone with a lawyer Simone didn't recognize. Young, sharp suit, the kind hired quickly. Patrice sat to Simone's left, spine rigid. Desmond read the will in his steady, unhurried way. When he got to the trust structure, Brianna's lawyer leaned forward. Desmond continued without looking up. The bulk of the Ashford estate, the full portfolio, the properties, the company equity, the accounts, had been placed, 7 years prior, into an irrevocable trust. Sole controlling trustee, Simone Ashford. Brianna stared at him. "What does that mean?" she said. "It means," Desmond said, setting the document down, "that the estate is not subject to outside claims. There is nothing to contest. The structure was finalized and recorded 7 years ago. It cannot be undone." Brianna looked at Simone. Simone looked back at her. Quiet. Still. "He promised me." Brianna's voice cracked for the first time. "He said—" "What he said to you privately has no legal standing," her own attorney murmured near her ear. Brianna pushed back her chair and stood, her face red and her eyes bright with fury and humiliation. She grabbed her bag. She said something sharp and ugly that Simone didn't bother to remember, and then she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her. The room was silent. Simone turned to Desmond. "I want to know exactly how long this was going on," she said. Her voice was even, precise. "And I want to know who else knew." The boxes had been sitting in the study closet for 2 years. Julian had always handled the physical filing himself, one of the few parts of the business he'd insisted on keeping. "I like having the paper trail organized my way," he used to say. Simone had let him have it. She handled the numbers. He handled the folders. It had felt like a reasonable division. Now she understood why he'd wanted control of the paper. She hauled the last box to the dining table just after 8 in the morning. Nadia was already there with 2 mugs of coffee and a look on her face that said she hadn't slept well either. She'd driven over at 7 without being asked, shown up at the door with a tote bag and her reading glasses, and simply said, "Tell me what we're doing." That was the thing about Nadia. She never made Simone explain herself twice. "Okay," Simone said, pulling Julian's old company laptop from its case and setting it on the table beside a legal pad. "I'm going through the company accounts going back 4 years. Every transfer, every vendor payment, every line item I don't immediately recognize." Nadia wrapped both hands around her mug. "What are we looking for?" "I don't know yet." Simone sat down and opened the first folder. "That's the point." It took 2 hours to find the first thread. It was small, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it, and very likely designed that way. A recurring transfer, every month, going back further than Simone had initially scrolled. $3,200, regular as a heartbeat, moving out of a mid-tier operating account into an LLC she didn't recognize. Harlow Property Group LLC. Simone stared at the name. She typed it into the state business registry and waited. Active. Registered 3 years and 4 months ago. No website. A registered agent address that was a mailbox service in Buckhead. She wrote the name on her legal pad and circled it. Then she went back to the transfers and started counting. By the time she'd finished cross-referencing the dates, her coffee had gone cold. 38 months of payments. Some months it was $3,200. Other months there were additional transfers. A larger sum, irregular, tagged with vendor codes she didn't recognize. A furniture expense. A utilities payment. A charge coded as a contractor fee for $6,000 that had no corresponding invoice anywhere in the files. She laid the pages out across the table in a line, oldest to newest, and just looked at them. Nadia leaned over her shoulder. "What is all that?" "A separate household," Simone said. The words sat there. Nadia straightened up slowly. "Simone." "The affair didn't start recently." Simone kept her eyes on the pages. "It's been going on for over 3 years. He wasn't just seeing her, he was supporting her. Rent, furniture, utilities, all of it running through this LLC, all of it paid out of the company." She paused. "The company we built together." Nadia put her mug down. "You need to call the police." "No! Simone, this is fraud. I know what it is." Simone's voice stayed flat and even. "And if I go to anyone right now, with this much and no more, they'll pull the thread and I won't control what unravels. I need the full picture first. Every account, every transfer, every name connected to this LLC." She tapped the legal pad. "I am not walking into any room half prepared." Nadia pressed her lips together. She looked like she wanted to argue more. She didn't. The registered agent was the piece that stopped Simone cold. She almost missed it. It was buried in the original LLC formation documents, which she'd had to request through a third-party service and which had taken most of the afternoon to pull up. A lot of shell companies used the same generic registered agent firms. She'd expected another mailbox service, another anonymous name. What she found instead was a legal services company called Cole & Getty Registered Agents LLC. She read it twice. Getty. Roland Getty. Julian's business partner of 9 years. The man who had sat at the funeral with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, already calculating something. Simone set the document down on the table very carefully. She did not say anything for a moment. "What?" Nadia asked, watching her face. Simone turned the page around and slid it across the table. Nadia read it, looked up. "Is that Getty's name?" "Yes." "So Getty knew about the LLC." "At minimum," Simone said. "At minimum, he knew." She sat back in her chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment, just breathing. 3 years of company money. A shell company with Getty's fingerprints on the paperwork. A woman who had walked into her husband's funeral and announced herself like she had something to stand on. All of it connected. Simone picked up her phone and opened her messages. She found Desmond's name and typed slowly, choosing each word. "I've been going through the company accounts. I found something you need to see. Can we meet tomorrow, privately? It involves Getty." She hit send, set the phone face down on the table. Then she pulled the next folder from the box and kept working. Desmond Cole's law office was on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown, all clean lines and dark wood, the kind of space that said serious money without having to announce it. Simone had been here before, closing deals, signing documents, the ordinary business of running a large estate. She had always felt comfortable in this room. Today felt different. She laid the printed pages on his desk before she even sat down. Transaction records, LLC formation documents, the registered agent filing with Getty's name. She had organized them in chronological order, oldest on top, and she had written a one-page summary in her own hand that laid out every connection she had found. Desmond picked up the summary first. He read it standing up. He didn't say anything for almost a full minute. Then he sat down slowly, set the page aside, and picked up the LLC formation document. He studied it the way someone studies a thing they already recognize. "You know what that is," Simone said. It wasn't a question. Desmond set the paper down. He took a breath. Cole and Getty Registered Agents is a joint administrative firm Roland and I set up years ago to handle filings for client LLCs. Standard practice. Efficient. He paused. I haven't been involved in the active operations in about 2 years. Roland took it over. I moved my client work to a different structure. So your name is still on the parent company? Yes. But Getty was the one running it? Yes. Simone nodded. Okay. She kept her voice level. Then you need to tell me what else you know. Desmond looked at her for a moment. The window behind him framed the city in pale morning light. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than one bad night. Julian came to me about 6 months before he died, he said. He asked me to draft a new will. The room was very quiet. He wanted to restructure the estate distribution, Desmond continued. Reduce your share significantly. Direct a substantial portion of the assets toward Brianna Doss and the child she was carrying. He folded his hands on the desk. He framed it as providing for the baby. That's how he put it to me. I need to make sure the child is provided for. Simone did not move. I didn't feel right about it, Desmond said. You and I both know the trust he set up years ago meant any new will would have had limited reach. But there were still assets outside that structure, and what he was asking for was significant. I told him I needed time to review the existing documents carefully before drafting anything new. He exhaled. And then I kept finding reasons to take more time. I told myself I was being thorough. Really, I was uncomfortable with what I was being asked to do. You stalled him. I stalled him. Yes. He met her eyes. And then he died, and the new will was never finalized. But Simone, I should have told you. I knew something was wrong. I knew what that request meant for you. And I said nothing. He paused. I'm sorry. That's not adequate. But it's the truth. Simone let the apology sit in the air between them. She didn't rush to accept it or dismiss it. What I need to know, she said finally, is whether you're telling me this now to clear your conscience or whether you're actually willing to help. I want to help you build a case, he said. Full documentation of Getty's involvement in the LLC, the financial trail connecting him to the diverted company funds, anything that ties Brianna Doss to a coordinated attempt to claim assets she had no legal standing to claim. He straightened in his chair. I can access business records, filing histories, correspondence through proper legal channels. I know where to look. Good, Simone said. Then here's how this works. She leaned forward, just slightly. You pull what you can pull. You share everything with me directly, not summarized, not filtered. I decide what we do with it and when. You don't contact Getty. You don't contact Brianna's attorney. You don't make any move without telling me first. She kept her eyes steady on his. This is not your case to manage. It's mine. Desmond held her gaze. He nodded. Understood. I'm not being difficult, she said. I just know what happens when someone else decides how much I need to know. Something shifted in his expression. Not offense. Something closer to respect. I understand, he said quietly. Simone gathered the papers from his desk and squared them into a neat stack. Start with Getty's business records. Anything connected to Harlow Property Group. Any filings, any correspondence, any financial documents that run through Cole and Getty Registered Agents from the past 4 years. I'll start today. She stood, picked up her bag, and tucked the stack of documents under her arm. I'll be in touch. She moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. What's that? I'm going to talk to Patrice. Desmond's expression shifted, just for a second. Are you sure that's… Yes, Simone said simply. She left him sitting at his desk with the morning light cutting across the dark wood and the quiet hum of the city 14 floors below. Patrice Ashford lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in Buckhead, the kind of house that had been professionally decorated and never quite looked lived in. Everything was cream and gold and carefully arranged. There were fresh flowers on the entry table. There always were. Simone had spent holidays in this house. 15 years of them. She rang the bell at 2 in the afternoon. Patrice answered the door in a silk blouse and pressed slacks, her silver hair set perfectly, looking like she had been waiting to be photographed. Her expression when she saw Simone was warm and practiced. "Simone, sweetheart, come in. I was just about to make tea." "I don't need tea," Simone said. "I just need a few minutes." They sat in the front parlor. The room smelled like gardenia. Patrice folded her hands in her lap, the picture of composed grief. Simone set the printed screenshots on the coffee table between them, the texts, the ultrasound photos, the dates clearly visible on every image, going back 3 years. Patrice looked down at them. She didn't reach for them. She didn't ask what they were. She just looked at them, and something in her face went very still. "How long have you known?" Simone asked. The silence stretched. A clock ticked somewhere down the hall. "Patrice." "About 14 months. Her voice came out smaller than usual, like something had gone out of it. "I saw them at Brasserie Henri, Julian and her. They were in a corner booth. He had his hand on hers." She pressed her lips together. "I told myself I had misread it, that it was a client, a friend of a friend." She paused. "I knew I hadn't misread it." Simone didn't say anything. She let the silence do its work. "I should have come to you," Patrice said. "I know that. But the merger with the Caldwell Group was still being finalized. Julian said one public disruption could kill the deal. And it was a $40 million transaction, Simone. The timing was terrible. I thought after the deal closed, I would speak to him privately. I would make him handle it." She lifted her eyes. "And then the deal closed, and I kept not doing it, because it was easier not to." "Easier for who?" Simone asked. Patrice looked away. She had no answer for that. "You let me sit in that hospital waiting room not knowing," Simone said. Her voice was level, quiet. "You sat next to me at his funeral while that woman walked in and announced herself to the whole room, and you already knew who she was. You had known for over a year." She paused. "You weren't protecting the family, Patrice. You were protecting yourself from an uncomfortable conversation." Patrice's jaw tightened. A shine appeared in her eyes that she clearly didn't want there. Simone leaned forward. "Getty," she said. "What do you know about Getty?" Patrice blinked. "Roland? He's Julian's business partner." "I know who he is. I'm asking what you know about his finances." A small hesitation, too small for most people to notice. Simone noticed. "Julian mentioned once that Roland had a creative way of structuring investments," Patrice said carefully. His words. "I didn't ask what he meant. Financial details were never I didn't involve myself in the business." "You heard something and you didn't ask." "I didn't think it was my place." "So Getty," Simone said, "just like Brianna, you saw something that didn't add up and you decided not to look at it." Patrice straightened in her chair. "I wasn't running the company, Simone. You were. If there was something wrong with Roland's finances, it was happening inside the company I kept the books for," Simone said, "while I was deliberately kept from knowing anything was wrong. By Julian, by Getty, and by you." She stood, smoothing her jacket. "I want you to understand something. I'm not asking for your help. I'm not asking for anything from you at all. I'm going to find everything there is to find about Getty and about Brianna, and I'm going to handle it. On my own terms." "Simone," Patrice's voice cracked, just barely. "I am so sorry. Truly. Simone picked up the printed pages from the coffee table and tucked them under her arm. "I know you are," she said. "Goodbye, Patrice." She walked to the front door and let herself out. The afternoon air was cool and sharp after the heavy floral warmth of the house. She sat in her car for a moment with both hands on the wheel, eyes straight ahead, breathing steadily. She didn't allow herself to feel everything that was pressing against her chest. Not yet. There was still too much to do. She drove home. Her phone rang at 7:30. Desmond. "I've been in Getty's records for the last 5 hours, he said. His voice was tight, controlled, but tight. The Brianna household was not the only thing running through that LLC. He's been siphoning funds from Ashford development accounts on a second track entirely. Different amounts, different timing, completely separate from the Brianna transfers." A pause. "Simone, we're not talking about a few $100,000. She was already reaching for a pen. "How much?" she asked. The call came on a Thursday, not from Brianna herself, from a man named Arthur Pelham, who introduced himself as Ms. Doss's legal representative and spoke in the smooth, careful tone of someone who charged by the hour and knew it. "Mrs. Ashford," he said, "my client understands this is a difficult time. She has no wish to make it more so. However, given the nature of Mr. Ashford's expressed intentions regarding her and the child, we believe it is in everyone's interest to resolve this privately and quickly." Simone was sitting at her desk. She had a pen in her hand. She set it down. "Go on," she said. "My client is prepared to file a paternity and financial support claim against the estate if a fair settlement cannot be reached. We would prefer to avoid that. Litigation is costly. It's public. It creates noise at a time when, from what I understand, the company is in the middle of some sensitive business activity." A pause. Just long enough to make sure she caught it. "A merger, I believe." There it was. "I'm aware of the merger," Simone said. "Of course. Then you understand that certain claims, the nature of Mr. Ashford's personal life, his intentions, his verbal promises, those things, once they're in a filing, become a matter of public record. Journalists pay attention to that kind of detail, especially when $100 million estate is involved." He let that sit for a moment. "My client is not looking for trouble, Mrs. Ashford. She's looking for fairness, for her child." Simone looked at the wall across from her. Julian's company photo was still hanging there, a wide grin, perfectly pressed suit, his hand on the shoulder of a city councilman at some gala she barely remembered. She thought about what she had in her files, what Desmond was finishing, what she had already set in motion 3 days ago through a legal intermediary that Brianna's attorney didn't know existed. "I'll need some time to consult with my own counsel," Simone said. Her voice was even, neutral, the voice of someone who might be considering it. "I'm not in a position to give you an answer today." "Of course," Pelham said. "We would ask for a response within the week." "I'll be in touch," Simone said. She hung up. She sat quietly for a moment. Then she picked up her pen and wrote one word on the notepad in front of her. "Good." She called Desmond that evening and told him about the call. "He mentioned the merger specifically?" Desmond asked. "Specifically enough. Getty fed them that angle." His voice had an edge she hadn't heard in him before. That's not something Brianna would have known to use on her own. "No," Simone agreed. "It isn't." She could hear him breathing on the other end, steady and slow, the way people breathe when they're working something through. "The embezzlement documentation," she said. "Where are we?" "Done." The single word landed with weight. "I finished the summary this afternoon. 16 transactions across 22 months. The amounts, the dates, the account routing, the Shell LLC's paperwork with Getty's registered agent signature on it. All of it. It's airtight, Simone." "Good. Don't send it anywhere yet. Don't file anything. I need it ready, but I need it quiet." "Understood." She paused. "I want to set a meeting at the company's headquarters next week." She looked out her kitchen window at the dark yard. "Frame it as a settlement discussion. Invite Brianna and her attorney. Invite Getty. Tell Getty we need him there as a company stakeholder because the claims touch Ashford assets." She kept her voice flat, like she was reading a grocery list. "Make sure they both believe it's exactly what it sounds like. A private table, a quiet resolution. Desmond was quiet for a beat. "And it won't be," he said. "No," she said. "It won't be." She had arranged the paternity test 10 days earlier, through a family law attorney in a different firm with no connection to the Ashford estate. A legal intermediary had obtained a DNA sample from Brianna's earlier court filing, where a sample had been submitted in support of her claim. The lab had been given no names, only numbers. The envelope arrived on a Friday evening, hand-delivered by courier, plain white, sealed with a small red sticker along the flap. Simone stood in the entry hall holding it. It was thin, 1 page, maybe 2. Whatever was inside had the power to change the shape of everything that was going to happen in that boardroom. She knew that. She felt the weight of it even through the paper. She carried it to her office. She set it in the center of her desk, directly under the lamp, where the light hit it clean and bright. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she opened her desk drawer, placed the envelope inside, and closed the drawer. She would open it tomorrow, in the boardroom, in front of all of them. Not tonight. Tonight, it could wait. Everything she had built toward this moment was already in place. She turned off the lamp and went to bed. The boardroom at Ashford Properties sat on the 14th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city skyline. On a clear morning, you could see the river. You could see the bridges. You could see, if you looked hard enough, the duplex in Eastfield where Simone and Julian had started all of this 15 years ago, with a single set of keys and a yellow legal pad full of numbers. Simone had arrived 40 minutes early. She arranged the room herself. A printed folder at each seat. Water glasses filled. The projector screen lowered at the far end. She didn't ask anyone to help. She wanted her hands on every piece of paper in this room before anyone else touched them. By 9:15, they were all there. Roland Getty sat to the left, in a charcoal suit and a blue tie, his silver hair combed back precisely. His attorney, a compact man named Forsyth, sat beside him with a leather portfolio open on the table. Getty looked calm. That was the word for it. The calm of a man who believed he understood the room he had walked into. Brianna sat across from him, 7 months along, dressed in a deep green wrap dress that had clearly been chosen with care. Pelham, her attorney, arranged his papers beside her with quiet efficiency. Brianna's eyes moved around the table when she first came in. She looked at Simone once, quickly, and then looked away. Patrice sat near the end of the table, alone. She had declined to bring her own attorney, which told Simone everything she needed to know about how Patrice saw herself in this room. Still a bystander. Still a witness to someone else's story. Desmond sat to Simone's right, a closed folder in front of him, his expression still. Simone stood at the head of the table. She did not begin by thanking anyone for coming. She did not set a warm tone. She picked up the first document from her folder, and she started. 3 years ago, she said, a shell company was registered in this state under the name Crestline Property Holdings, LLC. The registered agent on file is Martin Dwyer, who has served as Roland Getty's personal business agent for 11 years. She slid a copy of the registration document down the table toward Getty's side. Over the following 22 months, 16 wire transfers were made from Ashford Properties operating accounts into Crestline's holding account. The total amount moved was $431,000. Getty's jaw tightened, just slightly. His attorney leaned in and said something low. Those funds, Simone continued, paid the rent on a condominium on Harwell Street. They covered utility accounts, grocery charges, a car lease, and 4 months of private medical bills. She paused. The condo was occupied by Brianna Doss. Brianna's chin came up. Julian paid for that himself. He told me. He paid for it with company money, Simone said. Her voice didn't change. It was the same even tone she had used since the moment she started speaking. Money that belonged to this company, which means money that belonged, in part, to me. She let that land. Mr. Getty structured those transfers. He signed off on the routing documentation. He had full knowledge of the account's purpose. Getty leaned back in his chair. Those transfers were authorized by Julian. I have the authorization signatures, Simone said. She nodded toward Desmond, who slid a second set of documents across the table. Julian's signature appears on 4 of them. Yours appears on the remaining 12, including the 4 made after Julian first experienced chest pain and reduced his involvement in day-to-day operations. She looked at him directly. You kept sending money to that account after he got sick. Forsyth placed a hand on Getty's arm. Simone turned to the screen. Desmond pressed a button, and a spreadsheet appeared. Clean rows, labeled dates, amounts in red, account numbers in black. She let them look at it for a moment. Then she picked up the sealed white envelope from the table. The room noticed it. She saw Brianna's eyes drop to it, saw the slight shift in her posture. As part of this process, Simone said, I arranged an independent DNA analysis through a certified family law laboratory. The sample used was the one submitted by Ms. Doss's own legal team in her initial estate claim filing. She held the envelope up. I have not opened this yet. I wanted to do that here. No one spoke. Simone broke the seal. She unfolded the single page inside and read it, though she had already known, somewhere in her body, what it would say. She set it flat on the table and slid it to the center. The child Ms. Doss is carrying is not Julian Ashford's. The silence that followed was the kind that fills a space completely, like water in a jar. Brianna made a sound that wasn't quite a word. She looked at Pelham. Pelham looked at the page. Getty looked at Brianna. For the first time since he had walked in, his composure broke open just enough to show what was underneath it. And what was underneath it was cold, plain fury at having been dragged into a room for something built on a lie he hadn't even known was a lie. Simone folded her hands on the table. I am turning all of this, she said. The embezzlement documentation, the transfer records, the paternity results, and the correspondence related to the settlement threat, over to the company's board and to law enforcement. Effective today. The Ashford Properties Board met the following Tuesday in the same room where Simone had dismantled everything the week before. She had requested 2 hours. She used 90 minutes. There were 6 board members. 3 had known Julian personally. 2 had done business with Getty for over a decade. 1, a woman named Carol Vance, who had joined the board 18 months ago, had never fully trusted Getty's accounting explanations and had said so twice in meetings where nobody listened. Simone let the documents do most of the talking. She walked them through the Shell LLC, the 16 transfers, the routing signatures, the timeline. She showed them the months when Getty had kept the money moving after Julian's health declined. She showed them what the company had lost, not as an abstract number, but line by line, quarter by quarter, real money pulled from real projects that Simone had helped plan and price and build from the ground up. When she finished, Carol Vance was the first to speak. How long have you known about this? Fully confirmed, Simone said. 10 days. One of the older board members, a man named Holt, who had golfed with Getty for 15 years, sat very still with his hands flat on the table. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He just looked at the spreadsheet on the screen for a long moment, and then he looked away. The vote to remove Getty from his position was unanimous. The referral to law enforcement followed within the hour. By the time Simone walked out of the building that afternoon, Getty's keycard had been deactivated and his office had been secured. She heard later, through Desmond, that Getty had tried to call 3 board members that same evening. None of them had picked up. Brianna's attorney sent a single letter the following Thursday. It was short. It said his client would not be pursuing further claims against the estate. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done, just a quiet withdrawal, like a hand pulling back from something hot. The fraud allegations from the company moved forward regardless. Simone had handed over the full correspondence, the settlement threats, the hints about going to the press, the leveraging of a paternity claim that had turned out to be entirely fabricated. It was enough. The company's legal team would handle the rest. Nadia called the night the letter arrived. Are you going after her yourself? She asked. Personally, I mean. No, Simone said. Why not? Simone thought about it for a second. Because I don't need to. She tried to use a dead man and a baby that wasn't his to take money from a company I built. That's already in front of a prosecutor. That's enough. Nadia was quiet for a moment. You're not even a little tempted? I didn't say that. Nadia laughed, just briefly. It was the first time Simone had laughed, too, in longer than she could track. She called Patrice on a Friday afternoon. She had thought about waiting. She had thought about writing a letter instead, something she could draft and revise until it said exactly what she meant without any of the weight of a voice behind it. But that felt like one more way of managing something that deserved to be said plainly. Patrice answered on the second ring. Simone. Her voice was careful. It had been careful every time they had spoken since the boardroom. I wanted to talk to you directly, Simone said. I'm not going to draw it out. Okay. You knew about Brianna for over a year. Simone kept her voice level. Not cold exactly, just clear. You saw them together. You made a choice not to tell me. I understand why you made it. You were protecting the family name, protecting a merger, protecting Julian even after he didn't deserve it. She paused. But you weren't protecting me, and I was in that family too. Patrice didn't say anything right away. When she did speak, her voice had lost some of its composure. I thought if I said something, it would destroy everything you two had built. It was already destroyed, Simone said. You just let me keep living inside it without knowing. Silence. I'm not going to pretend we're fine, Simone said. I'm not going to come to Sunday dinners and act like none of this happened because it's easier for everyone. I'm not built that way. Simone, I don't hate you, Patrice. I want to be honest about that too. But I can't forgive a year of silence that kept everyone else comfortable and left me completely in the dark. Her voice stayed even. So I'm choosing distance. Not anger, just distance. Patrice said her name again, softly, like she was testing whether it still meant something. Simone said goodbye. She hung up. She sat with the phone in her hand for a moment, and then she set it on the table and didn't pick it up again. Over the next 2 weeks, Desmond worked alongside Simone to stabilize the company's accounts, replacing Getty's access with a new financial oversight structure she designed herself. There was a lot to untangle. She had expected that. She had been untangling other people's messes quietly for 15 years, and she was good at it. On a Thursday morning in early spring, the board convened a short, formal session. They appointed Simone Ashford as sole controlling head of Ashford Properties. 6 months was enough time for a building to feel different. The Ashford Properties headquarters was the same glass and stone structure on the corner of Meridian and 5th that it had always been. Same lobby, same elevator bank, same view of the city from the 4th floor that Julian had always pointed out to clients like he'd personally arranged it. But when Simone walked through the front doors on a Tuesday morning in early October, the woman at the front desk looked up and said, "Good morning, Ms. Ashford," without any of the old hesitation, without the quick glance toward the hallway to see if Julian was behind her. Just her. That was who they were expecting. She took the elevator to the 4th floor, nodded to her assistant Marcus, who handed her a coffee and a folder without being asked, and walked into her office. It had been Julian's office. It wasn't anymore. She had repainted it a deep, quiet gray. She had replaced the heavy mahogany desk with something lighter, a wide surface she could actually spread documents across without feeling swallowed by the furniture. The framed photo of Julian shaking hands with the city's former mayor was gone. In its place was a single framed quote from a book Nadia had given her the previous spring, printed in clean black type. "Do the work, then leave." She set her coffee down and opened the folder Marcus had prepared. 3 meetings before noon. A call with the contractors on the Linden Street development at 2. A board check-in at 4. She had built this schedule herself. She ran it herself. And she was good at it. Not in the quiet, invisible way she had been good at it for 15 years, doing the math behind the curtain while Julian stood in the light, but openly and completely, in rooms where the credit landed on her name. The difference was something she still noticed. She suspected she would for a long time. Nadia stopped by that evening, the way she did most Tuesdays, arriving with takeout containers and the easy familiarity of someone who had been in the trenches with you and stayed anyway. They ate at the small table in Simone's office. Nadia had traded her scrubs for jeans and an oversized sweater and looked comfortable in a way that made the whole room feel less formal. "Carol Vance told me to tell you the Linden Street numbers came in early," Simone said. "I don't know who that is." "Board member. The one who never trusted Getty." "Oh, the woman with the good instincts." Nadia pointed her fork. "Tell her I said she has good instincts." Simone smiled. "I'll pass that along." They talked for an hour, about Nadia's shift the night before, about a vacation Nadia kept threatening to take and never did, about small things that had nothing to do with lawyers or shell companies or sealed envelopes. It felt like breathing after holding your breath for a long time. Before Nadia left, she paused at the door. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" Nadia considered it. "Like you're not waiting for something bad to happen." Simone thought about that after the door closed. Desmond came by on Wednesday mornings now. It was a standing arrangement. Coffee, the week's legal updates, a review of anything requiring his sign-off. He had folded himself into the company's operations with a quiet competence that Simone had come to rely on, and he never tried to take up more space than she gave him. That Wednesday, he arrived exactly on time, as he always did, and they worked through the agenda without much wasted effort. He had a way of listening when she laid out a problem that felt different from how other people listened, fully, without already forming his response. At the end of the meeting, as he was gathering his files, he said, "You know, the Harmon development next spring is going to be the biggest thing this company has touched in 5 years. "I know," she said. "You're not nervous?" "I didn't say that." He looked at her for just a moment longer than necessary. Then he smiled, small and honest, and said he'd see her next week. She watched him go. She didn't let herself think too hard about it. Late that afternoon, after the board call had wrapped and Marcus had gone home, Simone stood alone at the far end of the office. There was a filing cabinet in the corner, dark gray, the kind that locked. She had brought it from storage when she took over the office. It had held the last of Julian's unfinished files, a handful of deals that had never closed, notes on projects that had died with him. She had worked through all of them over the past 6 months, one by one, closing what could be closed and letting go of the rest. She opened the bottom drawer now and pulled out the last folder. It was thin, a single property, a waterfront lot Julian had been circling for 2 years without ever committing. She reviewed the numbers. She made a decision. She stamped it closed. She set the folder in the completed stack. She slid the drawer shut. She stood still for a moment in the quiet of the room. Then she reached over and turned off the light, picked up her bag from the desk that was hers, and walked out. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got 2 stories on the screen that you have to watch next. Have a great day!